Right now, though, we're going to move on with a check on the headlines in today's French newspapers. Hi there, Dipti Laurent. You've been checking through them for us. Now, as is much of the international press, the French press also looking at this newly launched operation to retake Mosul.
The Battle of Mosul, that's what the French Catholic paper La Croix says on its front page. They're really looking at what's at stake in this important offensive to take back what is the last stronghold of the Islamic State group in Iraq. Mosul has been in the hands of the jihadists since June 2014. The paper also looks at the risks in this offensive. La Croix says the city could become a battleground for new rivalries. After all, Mosul is home to, it's very ethnically diverse. You have Arab, Kurd, and Turkmen populations, but also Sunnis, Shiites, and Christians. For La Croix, the day that these groups no longer wage war against each other, well, that'll be the day that marks the end of the Islamic State group.
And Libération also looking at the battle for Mosul.
That's right. It's a high-scale operation. Libé saying that there'll be aerial support from the U.S. and a massive presence, of course, of Iraqi forces. There's also a lot of analysis in the papers. This morning, Luluwa al-Rashid, who's a researcher, has told Libé that there could be, quote, disastrous humanitarian consequences from this battle. Forces fighting the jihadists need to also be prepared for the fact that maybe the IS group would reconstitute themselves using other local groups. And this researcher is critical on one point in particular. That's the fact that she believes there's no real plan for what happens after they retake Mosul.
All right, there's also news from here in France, which is grabbing a few headlines, particularly what the president is up to. François Hollande is heading to an industrial site in the east of France this Monday.
That's right. That site is Florange. It's in the Lorraine region, and it's not any old industrial site. It's actually the site where 2 of 4 steelmaking furnaces were shut down. They were steel furnaces from ArcelorMittal. They were shut down 4 years ago in 2012 after ArcelorMittal was unable to find a buyer, and it prompted sit-ins by workers to defend their jobs and ultimately saw the loss of hundreds of jobs there. And it's important to notice that Hollande actually promised to visit the site every year. He didn't last year, but of course, this being, a pre-election year, he's there. He will be there. For Le Figaro, Florange is one of the symbols of the decline of French industries, but it's also a political symbol. I quote, "The first of many promises not kept by the government." Hollande, on the other hand, defends the site, saying, well, at least there was no restructuring plan, and argues that ArcelorMittal actually reinvested back into the site with high-tech steel-making facilities and a research center at the remaining sites.
So a president showing he's interested in the industry of his country, or what remains of it in some places. But the press in general seems to be quite critical of his visit to Florange.
That's right. Let's start with Le Parisien and this article called "The Ghost of the Blast Furnaces." Le Parisien newspaper reminds readers about the fact that steel is no longer produced on this site, and it really is sort of symbol the downfall of French industries. In its editorial, the communist paper L'Humanité denounces what it calls Hollande's return to devastation. They actually liken this trip this Monday to a visit to the cemetery during Toussaint. Toussaint, of course, being the upcoming holiday in France where people honor the dead.
All right, this all being analysed, as you touched on before, through the lens of this being a pre-election year here in France.
Well, Hollande is still not officially candidate for his own re-election, but L'Opinion, which is a right-wing paper, wonders if he's not offside or hors-jeu. That's what it says in this front page article. I quote in the article, "The people are saying no to François Hollande, and in particular, a lot of heavyweights are even favorable to someone like Manuel Valls, especially at this time where François Hollande is so low in the opinion polls." And this cartoon really says it all. You have François Hollande playing strip poker here, and he's visibly lost all his clothes because they're on the table there. And yet he remains stubborn, hard-headed in that speech bubble. He says, well, with this kind of game, it would be a shame to stop here. So for L'Opinion, he's still intent on running again, despite all signs pointing that he would lose.
All right. So from someone who looks perhaps likely to lose, I think you can say that, to someone who's rather winning at life and at a pretty young age as well. An 11-year-old girl who's taking the Vienna Opera by storm.
That's right. Her name is Alma Deutscher. She's a little girl from southern England, and she has composed her own opera. Based
Already? All by yourself?
All by herself, based on the fairy tale Cinderella. It's being staged this Christmas in the world's beating heart of operas, Vienna, the Austrian capital. The opera takes place in Transylvania. The two wicked stepsisters have been reimagined as pretentious divas, the website Lubs reports. Alma has been composing music since the ripe old age of 6. And she says sometimes she wishes she were old and fat with a beard because people might take her more seriously.
Well, going by that picture, she's pretty cute just as she is. Well done to her. I'll be looking forward to hearing some of that when it does get played and inevitably recorded, I should say,
That's
at
right.
Christmas. Thanks very much, Diptyque Laurent, who'll be back a bit later on looking through the international press for us as well.